Hey everyone, welcome back to The Problem With, and today we're going to be talking about the problem with Kamala Khan. Now before we can get into the actual issues with Kamala Khan, I have a few things that I want to state on this situation. First, my co-host is so irritated with this, my cat Fang, that she doesn't even want to be on this particular episode. She's upstairs right now buried in a blanket, not because she's a cat and it was the coolest thing that she had ever found, but because she was so upset by Kamala Khan. That's the story and I'm sticking to it, and so is Fang. Second thing, I want to open up by stating one particular thing. Comic books are art. Your takeaway from a comic book is different from mine. Art in general is subjective, meaning that you can read the story of Kamala Khan and feel a certain way about it, while I can read the story of Kamala Khan's death and feel a certain way about it. So no matter what I'm about to say or what I'm about to do, I don't want to discount anyone in particular's feelings about the situation. I've spoken to a lot of people who look at it from a very racial point of view, people who are looking at it from a very feminist point of view, people who are just looking at it from a generalized comic book point of view. And the opinions are all over the place on this situation, and that's important. And I'm going to bring that up as to why very quickly in this video. But there's a reason why this is important. But regardless about what I'm about to state, if your takeaway from art is to be upset by what happened, you are allowed to have those feelings. Now, let's talk about the death of Kamala Khan. First off, I got to explain what actually happened so you know what's going on, in case you missed our videos. If you want to hear the story in an audio drama fashion, I'll link those videos down below. We have now officially covered it, but let's get into what actually happened. Kamala Khan was introduced into the Amazing Spider-Man series all the way back at like issue 1 or 2. She's basically an intern that is working at the Oscorp organization, seemingly to keep an eye on Norman Osborn or to just propel her own schoolings. We actually don't really know because they don't dive that much into it. Over the course of the issues of 1 to 25, Kamala Khan shows up in general for about 12 panels. She plays a much larger role in the Dark Web event, which was a crossover event involved in the Spider-Man comic books, but she did it in her own break-off book, Dark Web Miss Marvel. She wasn't actually doing it in the Spider-Man book. People did the count, and if it's incorrect, I'm sorry, but it's pretty close to accurate. It's about 12 to 15 panels total in the mainline Spider-Man book that Kamala Khan showed up for before issue 26. While this is going on, we were dealing with the issue of what did Peter do? The concept behind that was Mary Jane was with a guy named Paul, Mary Jane had 2 kids, and nobody wants to talk to Peter, from the Fantastic Four to Captain America. Everyone's mad at Peter. What did he do? We spent 25 issues building up this mystery, only to discover in issue 21 that what Peter did was pretty much nothing. He got pulled into an alternate universe, a hellscape landscape with Mary Jane. They were going to fight a seemingly returning god. The only way to prevent the god from coming back was to prevent the god from killing Peter Parker. So Peter was going to save Mary Jane. The last second she did a switcheroo, sent Peter back to New York, and he freaked out because he realized that the hellscape moves much faster than the real world. So he panicked, looking for a way to get back to save Mary Jane. He gets back there. It's been about 4 years later. He grabs Mary Jane. He grabs the guy that she's been with for 4 years named Paul, and he grabs the 2 kids. He brings them into the current day New York landscape. Our evil god shows up. It's like way up or whatever. He's dead. He comes through the portal as well, follows them through. His entire goal at this point is to kill Mary Jane, and if he does that, he'll gain the full powers of his godlike godhood or whatever it is, and he needs to sacrifice Mary Jane. He begins to battle against our heroes. They are all talking about what Peter did. They're all coming together. They all team up, and out of the blue, Miss Marvel shows up. As a matter of fact, the way she shows up is at the very beginning of the comic book. Peter and Mary Jane are standing there looking at this evil god showing up. This is like the whatever guy showed up. The guy that was going to bring the evil god to the universe. He shows up, looks at Peter and Mary Jane, and Peter says, "Man, if only we had friends," something along those lines. Gold Goblin, aka Norman Osborn, shows up and says, "You've got friends to help you out." And Miss Marvel basically says, "And me too." As a matter of fact, I think that's the exact line. They're like, "You've got friends to help." And she's like, "And I'm here also." And even Peter Parker's like, "Miss Marvel?" Because she hasn't been in the book. She hasn't been in the book. That's the problem right there. If Peter Parker's questioning why she's there, she hasn't been in the book. That's why. All right, I'm not on that part of the rant yet. Let's keep going. She's not in the book! Anyway, moving forward. Battle against the guy who's trying to summon the god. He summons like a weird dragon thing that distracts the Fantastic Four. All of them go over there. It boils down to Mary Jane is now being protected by Miss Marvel. Peter Parker gets defeated. Villain goes warping over. Goes to kill Mary Jane. Miss Marvel says that he can't chase both of us, sends Mary Jane down one alleyway, sends herself down another alleyway. Then we see Mary Jane getting stabbed through the chest. Peter freaks out. Mary Jane's dead. The guy's like, I've done it. I've killed the Scarlet Woman, and therefore my god is going to be revived. But the god arrives and tells him that he's a liar, kills him, leaves, issue's over. Somebody else died. We then cut to the death of Mary Jane to discover that it was actually a shape-shifted Miss Marvel, which is hilarious because, side note, we were talking to Dan, and Dan was like, hey, I don't remember that she could shapeshift. Did they make that up? And I'm like, she technically did it in her first volume, and I think once or twice since then. It's a forgotten power that Miss Marvel had, but she can actually shape change. Keep that in mind. Anyway, it turns back into Miss Marvel, and she dies, and then she asks Peter if she did good, to which Peter says that she died as a hero, and boom, Miss Marvel has died. So that's what happened. Marvel was teasing up until this point that there was going to be some large ramifications for the Spider-Man mythos that was going to be happening at the end of the storyline. The implications were that something happened with Mary Jane or that she was going to die. They were hinting at that. They even said that the writer, Zeb Wells, was not going to be allowed to go to a Comic-Con for fear of his life. Then 2 weeks before that issue came out, they released a huge public statement that the person dying is going to be Miss Marvel. So they spoiled their own big moment. Okay? Right off the bat, terrible marketing. Why would you do that? But actually good marketing. And I'm going to explain that in a minute. Now we've got the internet up in arms. Miss Marvel should not have died. I'm going to go through what I've seen, and we'll line it up. Miss Marvel should not have died. Miss Marvel dying means that women aren't welcome in comic books. Miss Marvel dying means that Marvel's big sales and big push for Miss Marvel isn't working. Miss Marvel dying is a racial thing because it's a, I believe, Pakistani superhero who's Muslim who has now been killed, and I believe she's the only one in a prominent AAA title at the moment, or a AAA publisher. These are the things I've seen on the internet, okay? Miss Marvel is a case of fridging not going away. Now, let's tackle this can of worms. We're going to explore why did they kill Miss Marvel and why this is definitely not going how they intended. But again, I want to state, this is my opinions and my research. Your feelings towards the death of Miss Marvel are not being discounted by me. You're allowed to feel how you feel. Comic books and storytelling are art. Art is subjective. You're allowed to feel how you feel from them. So the first thing we need to do is discuss fridging. Fridging is a term that everyone is throwing around. Fridging is a term that was coined all the way back in Kyle Rayner's Green Lantern run. He had a girlfriend who had no agency, no character development, and literally existed so that when Kyle Rayner came home, there was a beautiful girl waiting for him. Eventually, there was a villain that showed up, murdered that girlfriend, and cut her into pieces and shoved her into a fridge. This coined the term that women only exist within comic books to propel the male fantasy and the male storyline. This is one of those things that you can look at and say, Kamala Khan was placed into the Spider-Man comic book as a way to fridge her to propel Spider-Man's storyline. I don't fully agree with that because, and we're going to get to what I think they were actually doing with Miss Marvel's death in a second, but Miss Marvel isn't some random background character in Spider-Man. Miss Marvel's a character that was introduced like 2013 to 2015 era, and she's had very successful comic book runs with a lot of fans, got her own TV show. She's going to be in a movie in 3 months. Miss Marvel is not some random girlfriend of Peter Parker's. She's just not. Now, the reason why this still could be construed as fridging is Miss Marvel isn't in the Spider-Man comic. Again, we go back. If she just existed, like in general, teamed up with him, spoke to him, I don't know if they've exchanged more than 3 words, and I don't care enough to look back and find out right now because I don't think they did. The problem is this could be a case of fridging her because she pretty much shows up to die. That is it. She doesn't have a comic book on her own right now at all. So the only character that we have for Miss Marvel at the moment is the one that is in Spider-Man 26, who shows up to be a hero and die. Now, is it true fridging? I don't think it's true fridging in the sense of she only existed to propel Spider-Man because she does have her own character, her own agency, her own supporting cast, the whole 9 yards. She's about to get comic books that are literally called The Death of Miss Marvel and how everyone reacts to it and what's going on. If this was a true case of fridging, she would have shown up, she wouldn't have existed prior to Spider-Man, and she would have been killed, and that's the end of it. And Spider-Man just uses it as a motive to continue to battle the villains that are going around. But again, this is something that you could look at yourself and decide for yourself because, again, this is your feelings on the situation. I've also seen the argument that Miss Marvel's death proves that women aren't welcome in comics. I 100% disagree with this as well. I still, again, I'm going to go into why I think they did this in a second, but recently we were looking it up and I was actually shocked by these numbers, but the female demographic for comic books is very, very high. If you do a quick Google search, it's 63% of comic book readers are male while 37% are female. I mean, I'll admit, that's a lot higher than I thought it was going to be when I did that original Google search. So I don't think that this is saying that women are unwelcome in the world of comic books. Women are allowed to have heroes like Captain Marvel or Miss Marvel or Spider-Woman. You can be a fan of Batgirls and stuff like that. But in traditional comic book sense, they're going to go through the same trials and tribulations as a male character within the comic book world. You know what happens a lot? The heroes die. A lot. For no reason. So I don't think this is an unwelcoming sign. There's plenty of other comic books out there, and there's plenty of the heroes out there, and I think this is just a part of Miss Marvel's journey. This is the part that they're going to do with that. But again, you take this for how you want to take it. Art is subjective. You could be taking this as a sign you're not welcome. But that moves into the argument of why. If this isn't a case of them fridging her to propel Spider-Man storyline, if this isn't a backdoor pseudo, we want to tell women they're not welcome method, if this isn't either of those, why would they cancel Miss Marvel's comic book, put her as a background character in Amazing Spider-Man, not use her in any way, shape, or form? If you just used her, it would have been fine. It would have made so much more sense. All she had to do was exist in the comic. Anyway, if they're going to use her in this way, why would they do this, Benny? That's the question we're getting to here. That's the whole point of all of this. Marketing. Let me take you back a year ago. Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, that whole movie. During that time, Marvel tried to spike the sales of Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange has never been a huge seller. He's got his niche audience. He's got some amazing stories, but he's also got some weird stories, and a lot of people buy them. So to bolster the sales, as they do, they killed him. It's been proven. If you have a new number one or you kill a superhero, you're going to get better sales on that superhero. So, kill Doctor Strange. The title of the storyline was The Death of Doctor Strange. And I'll bet 80% of you never heard that story existed. You see, the reason is because the death of Doctor Strange is going to matter to the Doctor Strange fans and the comic book collector fans. It's not going to matter to the general public. It's not going to hit the zeitgeist of comic book TikTok and Twitter and Instagram because very few people care and very few people are even following Doctor Strange. Okay? How many people know that Green Arrow died back in Dark Crisis? I think it was Dark Crisis. He's not dead right now. We just discovered that, but he's been dead for like 6 months or something like that. The family's literally looking for him from his death. You know what I never hear people talking about? Oh yeah, Green Arrow died. I don't hear that. People don't bring that up. You know who also technically just died and it for some reason didn't make headlines? Batman. Failsafe killed Batman. Dan's doing kind of, and I agree, kind of, but I didn't see a single headline that Batman just died in a Batman comic. The entire Justice League, Death of the Justice League, lasted 2 days. It was issue 75. It was actually pretty cool. We did it on the channel. But the point I'm getting at is deaths for superheroes don't make crazy headlines anymore. You know why? They die every other week. I mean, if I title a video right now, Batman dies, I'm going to get 80 comments going, they're bankrupt, they don't know what they're doing, this is terrible, blah, 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 blah. Okay? My favorite, just side note, tangent, because you guys know me, is when I say something like Miles Morales gets a new power, and then someone responds with, comic books are bankrupt, go read manga like My Hero Academia, and then I'm like, so Miles gets a new power, and we call them bankrupt, but, Deku can get a new power off panel, and we're cool with it. But whatever, let's ignore that. Let's ignore you making no sense, random commenter. Anyway, the reason why Miss Marvel's comic book got canceled and the why she got put into the Amazing Spider-Man 2 die was so exactly what you're doing. They wanted you all to make videos on TikTok and YouTube. They wanted people cheering her death and they wanted people upset by her death. They wanted people to find it racist. They wanted people to find it anti-feminist and they wanted people to find it just appalling and fridging. They wanted this discussion because we've entered into an era where people just make hate-filled videos or clickbaity videos. And I'm also to blame for that. If you haven't noticed here on Comicstorian, thanks to the way YouTube's going, The last 4 weeks have just been nothing but clickbait titles. It's because that's what gets the clicks. That's why we do these things. Now, for me, I like to pride myself on clickbait that is actually in my videos. I don't just make shit up, but that doesn't mean it's not 10 seconds of the video. Anyway, they wanted you to react the way you are because you're all talking about Miss Marvel right now. Think about how this panned out. Think about how strategic this actually was. This book came out the end of May. 2 to 3 weeks before that, there were leaks that Mary Jane wasn't going to die, that it was going to be Miss Marvel. Leaks were going around. Everyone's getting antsy. How could this be true? How could this be a thing? We're all talking about Spider-Man 26. Then Marvel releases what's going to happen in Spider-Man 26. Miss Marvel's going to die. The talks were starting to die out. We're all talking about Spider-Man 26 again. How is Miss Marvel going to die? How are you going to do this? She's not in the comic book. She barely exists. She doesn't have a book of her own right now. The talks start. Everyone's freaking out. What's going on with Miss Marvel? You know who's getting headlines again? Miss Marvel. You know whose trailer dropped right around that time? The Marvels. Now we get to the end of May. Miss Marvel's death actually happens. The talks all commence again. People are on Twitter. Miss Marvel's death means this to me. My takeaway is that they're racist. My takeaway is that they don't want women in the space. My takeaway is this is every comic book death ever. My takeaway is this is super bankrupt. Everyone, including me, is talking about Miss Marvel's death. We're all talking about Amazing Spider-Man 26. Everyone's got feelings on it. Everyone has a reaction to it. Everyone is talking about Miss Marvel. Whose movies come out in 3 months? Miss Marvel's. I mean, it's called The Marvels, but it's still Miss Marvel's movie. Who also had their powers changed in the MCU so that they weren't related to Inhumans anymore? Miss Marvel. And who currently has a way to resurrect people and alter their DNA ever so slightly if they want to? The X-Men. So they did this so that you would all talk about it the way you are. So I would make this video so that I would do the story talking about it. I already technically did an Amazing Spider-Man rant. This is going to be technically my 4th video on the general topic of the death of Miss Marvel. Now let's talk about the people all over Twitter. Let's talk about the people all over TikTok. Let's talk about people all over Instagram, the articles. Everyone is talking about this now. In the comic book zeitgeist. Like, once again, if you happen to stumble upon this and you don't follow comic books religiously, you might not have heard of this. But the point I'm making is in the comic book bubble, we're all talking about it. Sales are through the freaking roof because everyone's buying it. That's why this happened. I will bet you a cookie. It's my thing. Watch the full stories. A cookie. All of you, within 3 months, we're going to have a month of mourning for Miss Marvel. And then they're going to start announcing Miss Marvel #1. They're going to get some prestigious writer on it, some amazing artist on it, and the revival of Miss Marvel is going to come out. What's the Marvel's release date? November 10th, the Marvels come out. I am predicting October is going to be Miss Marvel #1. The revival of Miss Marvel as a mutant. And if you're following what's going on with the X-Men, it's probably going to be right in line with the X-Men. Like, little bit. I could see this being the last resurrection from the X-Men. They revive her, she becomes a mutant, and that is it. The line is drawn. The X-Men have to stop resurrecting people. Now Miss Marvel's going to be in the headlines again. She's going to become a mutant. She's going to be wrapped into the giant Krakoan X-Men thing. I could see all of that happening. This is my prediction as to where this is going. But that's the point. Again, your feelings are your feelings, and I'm not taking away from that. You're going to see this how you want to see it. Art is subjective. You know, we all look at things completely differently. And that's exactly what they're hoping for with this Miss Marvel moment. They want you to be mad, happy, enraged, ranting on social medias. That's what they want. And they got it. And I'm right here with it. I sense the irony, everyone. But that's it. That's the problem with the death of Miss Marvel. It's all about that click. It's all about that through rate. And it's all about, why didn't you just put her in the book? She could have been like Spider-Man's little sidekick. Every one of these storylines. She could have been talking to her at Oscorp. They could have just had like a single page, 25 issues, and you didn't think to give her single pages where they talk out of costume? She didn't show up when he's fighting the Sinister Six and he got all of his friends to show up. She didn't show up when like Black Cat and him are fighting against a fake Sinister Six. She shows up weirdly in the dark web. He's fighting 2 hobgoblins, or Norman Osborn gets involved. He gets involved, and no one's like, Miss Marvel. What the hell? She didn't even show up in Spider-Man Beyond. You could have had her be a part of things with Miles and Ben, and at least she would have made sense of the Spider-Man storyline. Why would you just not put her in the book? Why? All right, anyway, I'm done. I'll see you guys next time right here. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Why is she not in the book, Dad? Why is she not?